May I request all to switch off your mobile phones and put it on silent mode, please. Very good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. It is my pleasure to welcome you all to the Indian Council of World Affairs for the roundtable discussion on reflections on India-Bangladesh relations. We have amongst us eminent journalist and a veteran editor from Bangladesh and experts from India to share their views on the subject. The program will begin with the opening remarks by Ambassador Vijay Thakur Singh, Director General ICWA, followed by the discussion chaired and moderated by Shri Shantanu Mukharji, Advisor NatStrat and former National Security Advisor of Mauritius, and thereafter a brief question and answer session. To start, may I request Ambassador Vijay Thakur Singh, DG ICWA, to kindly deliver her opening remarks.
A very good afternoon and a very, very warm welcome to the Indian Council of World Affairs. Today's roundtable is on reflections on India-Bangladesh relations, and we are very pleased to welcome amidst us Mr. Shantanu Mukharji, who has, of course, been also the National Security Advisor of Mauritius. I also welcome Mr. Syed Badrul Ahsan, very prominent journalist of Bangladesh, and we know you've just come off a flight, but a very, very warm welcome to India. And I would also like to thank the two distinguished panelists who have joined us, Mr. Dipanjan Chaudhury, who is, of course, the editor of Economic Times, the Diplomatic Affairs, and, of course, Professor Sanjay Bhardwaj of JNU. A warm welcome to all the panelists. In March 2021, Prime Minister Modi visited Bangladesh, and he participated in the National Day of Bangladesh to mark three very important events. One was the 50th anniversary of the independence of Bangladesh. Second, the Golden Jubilee of the establishment of diplomatic relations between India and Bangladesh. Third, the birth centenary of Bangabandhu Sheikh Mujibur Rahman. Later, in September 2022, Prime Minister Sheikh Hasina visited India. Earlier, on 6th of December last year, in December 2021, we had jointly celebrated, India and Bangladesh had jointly celebrated the Maitri Divas, jointly in several countries, and that was to mark the day when India formally established diplomatic relations, so formally recognized Bangladesh as an independent nation state. We and ICWA were very privileged and honored to have observed the Maitri Divas, but also to have received a message from Prime Minister Sheikh Hasina for that occasion. Now, of course, Bangladesh emerged as an independent nation after bravely fighting a brutally oppressive regime. The people and the government of India had wholeheartedly supported the freedom struggle of Bangladesh. The memory of that shared struggle has, over the 5 decades, forged a very unique bond of friendship between the two countries that is both mutually beneficial as well as based on convergence of interests. What has stood out in our bilateral relations in the last few years is that there is the political will and the willingness on both sides to work together. These two factors have ensured the resolution of very complex issues. India and Bangladesh are both land as well as maritime neighbors, and both the borders have been amicably settled. The land boundary was settled through bilateral negotiations, and the maritime boundary through international arbitration, an award which was accepted by India. So therefore, this is a relationship which is exemplary, and we see cooperation in several fields. Over the years, Bangladesh and India have consolidated their political engagement. They have built a very comprehensive institutional mechanism in which they engage to discuss bilateral cooperation, and Bangladesh figures very prominently in India's neighborhood first policy. India has emerged as one of the biggest development partners of Bangladesh. And in the last few years, India has given 3 lines of credit to Bangladesh of about $8 billion for the development of infrastructure. And may I add, this was the biggest amount offered by India to any one country. Together, we have built a network of roads, railways, inland waterways, and ports. And these have greatly enhanced connectivity and will further deepen trade, culture, economic, and people-to-people linkages. In the energy sector, the India-Bangladesh Friendship Pipeline Project, the Metri Thermal Plant, power transmission lines, sub-regional cooperation, especially in the energy sector, is expanding. All these are very important because it's all happening at a time when the world is faced with an energy crisis, and we are taking positive steps forward. Bangladesh is India's largest trading partner in South Asia, and India is the second biggest trade partner of Bangladesh globally. Now, as Bangladesh moves out of its LDC status, and India and Bangladesh will go ahead with the discussions on the bilateral comprehensive economic partnership. What are the expectations on both sides? We would like to hear from this panel discussion on this, as well as additional ideas as what would be, how river management, border management, and handling of terrorist threats can be undertaken. What are the possibilities of cooperation in new and emerging areas, whether it's artificial intelligence, fintech, or data management? Because all these will be areas which should enter the discourse of India-Bangladesh cooperation as we look as building our partnership for the future. With these words, I request Mr. Shantanu Mukharji to chair the session and take the discussions forward. Thank you.
Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you, Ambassador Thakur. Profuse thanks to you for giving me this privilege to address a gathering organized under the aegis of the Indian Council of World Affairs. It is a dream come true for me, very nostalgic. Earlier days, I used to sit on the side benches as a member of the audience during the times of Mr. Rajiv Bhatia. I was telling you, Sarvajit Chakravarti, and before that, Mr. Sudeep Devri. I always felt enlightened, but never been given this offer. And thanks to you and my other friends for hosting Mr. Badrul, Ahsan, a good friend, the most knowledgeable historian, biographer, diplomat, everything combined together. And a Bangladeshi who has grown up in Pakistan, who understands Pakistan, from which Bangladesh seeded out much better. So no better person to enlighten us. Ambassador Thakur has already given an overview about everything, the trade, economy, commerce, partnership, etc. But as a chair, I also have to fulfill my rituals. And having been handling Bangladesh for the last so many years, since 1981, being posted there, so I'll share my bit, then I'll heavily rely on the two distinguished panelists, Professor Bhardwaj, an old friend, Dipanjan, and of course, the road forward, because this is very relevant, the reflections on Indo-Bangladesh relations, particularly at a time when both the countries are going to have their elections almost at the same time, and the challenges are enormous. So I'll quickly run through what I feel has been Hasina's milestones and the achievements in the last so many years. We saw her performing as a prime minister in her first term, that was in 1996 to 2001, if I'm correct. And that saw several of the deals, like the repatriation of the Chakmas, the Ganges Accord, and everything. So she was showing that time astute political skills by bringing the two countries together. The reflections were there, reflection is still now. And now it's a transition period from a politician to statesmanship, what I notice is in this term, which is handling since 2009, and now onwards. And the road has been bumpy, but she has been able to overcome it. And particularly walking hand in hand with India, it's quite a delicate act. Many times there are ripples whenever we see that China trying to send some overtures, Then there are reactions, whether it is a 2016 submarine deal. Our defense minister goes, what's happening is China is coming close, will they go there, and all, so many things happening. Pakistani overtures, invitation by Imran Khan, then come madam, visit us, whether she goes or not, whether the old bonhomie might return or something. These are certain there. There are very temporary reactions, but she had treated the path very cautiously, displaying great maturity and dexterity, if I may say. The challenges before this term is, number one, is political, definitely political. We have not seen before, she has an adversary now in the political this thing. I'm not taking personal, I'm taking the whole country into account. The Army League is in power. The adversary which I mentioned is the Bangladesh Nationalist Party, or the BNP. It is notorious for its partnership with Jamaat. Why I'm saying notorious? Because I'm saying is that we are discussing India also, the Indian interest, the security interest also. Jamaat was a partner of BNP in their rule when they collaborated in the second term, that is 2001 to 6, and before that, 91 to 96. And that is where we saw a huge collaboration where the jihadi elements got impetus, the help, etc. Nothing against a particular religion, but definitely everybody was emboldened, and we found that anti-India elements were there, not only on the fringes, but in the mainstream. That was quite a weakening thing for us. And they tried to harm India as well, surreptitiously. Couldn't succeed because of our vigil, as well as a very robust diplomacy, thanks to you and your ilk, ma'am. And we find that it was failed. But nevertheless, the attempts were always there. Also from the security point of view, with my huge security and intelligence background, I can say it with conviction. And you would agree with me, the Northeast insurgents and the terrorists are all finding safe havens in Bangladesh. And that was during the 2 terms of her adversary who I'm trying to describe, attempting to, was there, which was detrimental to the Indian security interests hugely. But with Hasina at the helm, this time and earlier also, we find that none of the Northeast insurgents willy-nilly have found refuge on the Bangladesh soil, which we should derive a great solace from. In absolutely plain terms, there's no politics in it. It's purely anti-terror stance for the larger interest. Whether it is India or anything, no insurgent should prosper or thrive on Bangladesh soil, which is quite an achievement. And many a time this has been thankfully acknowledged and otherwise also, but we have to bear in mind. On the other hand, we find that whether it is Ulfa, whether it is the Nagas, with the training, with the nexus with China, the insurgents, they absolutely flourish like anything there. And I know for sure that they were there and trying to harm us. Other than this partnership also, which is very infamous, was there and entering into commercial deals with certain elements who were not favorably disposed towards Indian interests. Those were there. So now, I'm not trying to suggest a long-term strategy how to defeat that, but politically, why I gave this preface to you all, ladies and gentlemen, is this, that I notice in the recent past, the BNP and its affiliates are flexing their muscles very much on the Dhaka Chittagong streets, and we find occasional attrition, violence, etc. Now their main leader, Khalida Zia, who is seriously indisposed under treatment, I wish her well, and gets back soon on her feet, and her son, who is wanted in Bangladesh, is in London. He's hiding from the clutches of law in Bangladesh, where he's wanted for murder, conspiracy, and other cases. Then who is the invisible leader, and which is the invisible force we need to identify, all of us, when we are doing the brainstorming, where the BNP is deriving its strength from? Maybe that we subsequently, I could be wrong. More experts are there with all their wealth of experience, would like to hear, because that is going to reflect not only the bilateral reflections or the interest they serve security in the long term. We find. This is one challenge. This is political. It could be dealt politically, diplomatically, but they are raising their absolutely ugly and obnoxious head time and again, as we gather from the newspapers. And very recently, even yesterday, I noticed some statements by the ministers that they are not achieving anything, BNP. Fine, that is there. Any political party in a parliamentary democracy, in a practicing democracy, is entitled to lodge protests and all. But a leaderless thing is absolutely, it is a rudderless, directionless, is leading us which way? Confrontation, violence, uncertain future, that needs to be taken. Maybe the agencies might brainstorm together and see. But that is one concern I thought that I flagged to the August gathering. Another thing is the fear of the communal politics. We noticed that the most acerbic and very condemnable statements have been coming, again coincidentally from her opponents. And like something the day before yesterday or 72 hours ago, there was this thing that a particular religion's scriptures have been compared to as akin to pornographic material. And they said they don't teach any ethical values or moral values, which was highly provocative. In the absence of any mature leader and very mediocre people leading the street agitations, and things appearing on the social media is very explosive and volatile and might incur the wrath of the other community. This is something which the government and power, the incumbent, must address to as my concern. It could be personal. As an analyst for long years or watching Bangladesh for so many years, this is one thing that there. As far as bilateral relations are concerned, as I say, on the economic ties, on everything, Hasina has been, and her government has been extremely cooperative. Even Tista has not reached its logical conclusion. Anything, still this thing goes on. Recognition of the Indian contribution to the War of Independence is still remembered with nostalgia, with huge, enormous gratitude. Last time, a few months ago, when Prime Minister Hasina was here, and it was heartening to see so many scholarships being awarded to the grandchildren of those Indian officers and soldiers who laid down their lives in the 71. This was a gesture in enormity which should go a long way. So that means that spirit is there. The pro-liberation spirit, the liberals, etc., everything is around, and the government is walking an extra mile to keep that alive. And that should be kept afloat by the present generation of Bangladeshi youth who were particularly born after 1971 to carry forward. And that will see a great Indo-Bangla relationship flourishing in leaps and bounds, failing which the radicals or those who do not want a good friendship between the two friendly neighbors, as you describe, the staunchest ally or the greatest partner, economic partner, that will go down the drain. That needs to be. And I should not make only the government responsible for that. Badrul Hassan Sahib might shed some light in his address, is that the civil rights group, the intellectuals, the liberals. I remember in 2005, the book was released in Habitat that Bangladesh, the next Afghanistan. And many people, Indians, they debated and they said this can never happen. Because if there are certain volume of jihadist mindset people there, but there are far more liberals and progressives in Bangladesh, they would always negate it, oppose it, as we see the minorities being protected and everything that is there. That equilibrium must be maintained. So other than the other two factors, communalism has to be nipped in bud, which is one of the priority tasks. And before the elections, as I say, the heated exchange of words, the provocative statements, and everything is coming here and there. That has to be curbed and contained at the earliest. All is not lost. On the external front, we see that she has been doing a great balancing act, say, handling China, the US, India, of course, Sri Lanka. On the whole, the relations are good. One very complex problem, which I should have mentioned earlier, which she handled very well, is the Rohingyas. Say about 10 plus lakhs of Rohingyas there, and Myanmar is refusing to take them. There has been reports since 2017, August, about large-scale indoctrination by several other groups, but they were able to contain that. Is a huge thing on part of the Bangladesh civil societies groups and all. So I think irrespective of the government, there has to be a feeling, a sentiment, a thought process among the youth of Bangladesh, which should feel that whosoever government is in power, it is also responsibility of the Bangladeshi people in conjunction with India, as we are discussing the bilateral ties, not to allow the undesirable elements to come and thrive on the Bangladesh soil. And I think I'll not take much time. Professor Bhardwaj, Badrul Ahsan Sahab, and my friend Dipanjan, and with I can request Badrul Ahsan Sahab to speak on. And thank you for listening. Thank you very much.
Ambassador Vijay Thakur Singh and Shri Shantanu Mukharji and distinguished guests, thank you for giving me the opportunity to be here. It's a very humbling moment for someone like me. I think I feel pretty intimidated, say, before this august audience, speaking on a subject which actually calls for reflections from people who have always dealt with these subjects. But I'll give it a try. But before that, my apologies for coming in rather late because of flight complications. Now, last evening in Calcutta, see, I had some dinner with my friends, and then I told them to take me to Shakespeare Shorani, which is formerly Theatre Road in Calcutta. And I told him to stop his car before Sri Aurobindo Bhavan, which used to be the headquarters of the Bangladesh government, provisional Bangladesh government in 1971, the government we call the Mujibnagar government. So, and Mr. Tajuddin Ahmed and all the ministers, members of the government worked from that building. Now it's Sri Aurobindo Bhavan building, of course, because Sri Aurobindo was born there. But I needed to stand there, and I told my friend to take a snapshot of him, because I call this, to paraphrase Pandit Jawaharlal Nehru, say, tryst with history. And see, this was a reflection on my part, or at least I would think so, that this Bhavan in Calcutta, that is a reflection of the relations that India and Bangladesh have had, particularly since 1971. We remember with gratitude the way the Indian government, Prime Minister Indira Gandhi and her government, and indeed Indian society by and large, assisted the Bangladesh liberation struggle through accommodating 1 million plus refugees who were fleeing Pakistani terror. I mean, we all know the story. Then again, the cooperation that went into building the Mukti Bahini and also giving space to our provisional government, to our writers, intellectuals, students, everybody else, in fact, general citizens of Bangladesh, to take part in the war of liberation, to give them, to have them undertake training, guerrilla training in 1971 against the Pakistan occupation forces. These are things that we remember in our country. And we also remember, we see, that no fewer than 18,000 Indian soldiers sacrificed their lives in the liberation of Bangladesh. Now, we have been talking lately in Bangladesh of monuments being erected in their honor. It's been a long time, 51 years have gone by, and because of all the upheavals that we have gone through in Bangladesh, as you know very well. So we started off as a democratic, secular state, but then within 3.5 years, everything was overturned. And when we started off as an independent state, we told ourselves, we informed ourselves that our state would be different from Pakistan, from what Pakistan had been. But then, unfortunately, we went the Pakistan way. We had 2 military dictators, in fact, 3 coups, August 1975. Then we had 3rd November, a counter coup, 7th November, another coup, then General Ershad's coup in March 1982. So in effect, we were burdened with military rule and quasi-military rule for as long as 21 years, all the way from 15th August 1975 to 12 June 1996, when Sheikh Hasina led the Awami League back to power. Now, these 21 years, we refer to these 21 years as a dark age in Bangladesh's history, for some very particular reasons. In the first place, we have this military dictatorship, these military dictatorships. Secondly, within the ambit of these two dictatorships, a notorious indemnity ordinance was promulgated by Khandakar Mushtaq, who seized power. He was a minister in Bangabandhu Sheikh Mujibur Rahman's cabinet, commerce minister. He seized power with the help of a bunch of majors and lieutenant colonels in the Bangladesh army, and they promulgated a notorious law called the Indemnity Ordinance in September 1975. In 1979, when under General Zia and his political party, the newly formed Bangladesh Nationalist Party at that time, they won the elections. Of course, it's always a rule, whenever a dictator is in power, his party always wins elections, as we have seen from the times of General Ayub Khan, self-styled Field Marshal Ayub Khan during the Pakistan days. So this notorious indemnity ordinance was inserted into the Constitution. It became a part of the Fifth Amendment to the Constitution. That is an embarrassment. That is a shame. Nothing like this has ever happened to any country or in any other constitution in the world. But this indemnity ordinance, it precluded, or it prevented the trial of the assassins of August 1975. Worse, many of these assassins, they were given diplomatic assignments. One went to Japan, some other people went to Kenya, some went to Pakistan, and even today we have two assassins who have been tried in absentia and convicted. They are one is in Canada, one is in the United States, and lately the government and Bangladesh's civil society have raised questions before the Canadians and the American governments about the presence of these people, these two persons, that they should be returned to the country to have the judgment against them carried out. And Ottawa and Washington, they keep telling us that this is against the rule of law. You have capital punishment, we can't return them to your country. Our question is, if you believe in rule of law, and you knew that these two people were assassins, they assassinated the father of the nation, along with 17 other members of his family. So if there's actual rule of law in your country, how did you give them refuge, and how did you give them citizenship? They're citizens of Canada and the United States in that order. So the point I'm trying to, I won't take up much time, I'm sorry, we have a good number of speakers. So we've come out of that period, of that dark age, and in the last so many years, when we speak of Indian cooperation, when we speak of relations with India, I think we have restored the balance that was there in relations between India and Bangladesh, beginning in 1971. So again, in those 21 years, the atmosphere that was whipped up in the country by those who seized power or stayed in power or came to power through elections, the BNP, for example, Begum Khaleda Zia, they had a distinct anti-India policy to follow. And anti-India, and again, there was this attitude of friendliness toward Pakistan. Now, there's no problem with being friendly towards a country, towards any country. But with Pakistan, our problem was and still remains the same. Pakistan has never apologized for the atrocities committed by its army in 1971. In fact, the newly retired General Bhardwaj said the other day that it was a political failure of Pakistan in 1971, not a military failure. 93,000 soldiers have surrendered, and you call it a political failure. That is one point. And then the other thing is, one of my friends who was a diplomat Bangladesh diplomat in Islamabad, now he's posted in Europe. I was talking to him the other day on email about writing a new article asking Pakistan to apologize for the 1971 atrocities. He replied that Pakistan will never apologize, and he sent me two pictures of the Army Museum in Lahore. Pakistan Army has a museum in Lahore, and he sent me two pictures, 2 pages. The first picture, the headline is, in 1971, it was not the Pakistan Army, but the Bangladesh Mukti Bahini which committed genocide. That's in the Pakistan Army Museum. The second poster says, in 1971, the very first terrorist force in South Asia was the Mukti Bahini, and it was set up by the government of India. So with attitudes like this, you don't expect them to apologize. So which is why we go back to this idea of India-Bangladesh cooperation. That we have, as Mukharji pointed out, we have, and the ambassador also pointed out, by we I mean the people of Bangladesh and the people of India through their governments have strictly dealt with militancy and Islamist terrorism. Now, we can't say that these militants have been rooted out, because there are still pockets of these people coming up under new names, and they're being nabbed, and they're not so far they have not been able to make any headway, especially after the crackdown on terrorism that began following the massacre of people in a place called the Holy Artisan Bakery in Dhaka in July 2016. So that is an area of cooperation where Bangladesh and India need to be involved. Then this terrorism this issue of terrorism can also be extended to what is happening in the Rohingya camps. These Rohingya camps are being indoctrinated by extremist elements, extremist Islamist elements in the camps, and many of them have traveled to Saudi Arabia on Bangladesh passports. How they got those passports? Through corrupt practices on the part of certain Bangladesh officials. That is one question we need to deal with. But here too, I think the Indian government can help in curbing the growth of terrorism among the Rohingya, in the Rohingya camps, along with the fact that we in Bangladesh have always expected India to assert its role, assert its influence over the Myanmar regime in convincing the regime. And this regime doesn't listen. So, but then the Indians, say, with the clout that they have in the region, they could exert more pressure. We also expected the Chinese to do it, but then China is China. So we have a very proper relation. I won't say with India we have a very warm and friendly. We have very warm and friendly ties. With China we have proper relations. At least with them, say as far as China is concerned. So we have kept them at bay. We don't have a Gwadar, as in Pakistan. We don't have a Hambantota, as in Sri Lanka. So we'd like to keep it that way. But overall, we would like India to exert more influence, say more, not pressure, but let's say influence and gentle persuasion of the Myanmar regime into taking back their refugees, more than a million of them. And although the government of Bangladesh has been taking care of them for so many years, but then the future will be difficult if we don't tackle what is happening within the camps, apart from the sufferings that they've been subjected to in their own country. Then we have economic cooperation, of course. India is Bangladesh's largest trading partner in South Asia. Obviously, naturally, because India is such a huge country, and compared to our geographical area, 54,126 square miles, the trade imbalance will be there. But I think we could also look to more efforts by the Indian authorities into allowing more of our products into India. Of course, India doesn't need all these products because India has its product, but then that would, I think, help us, our economy, help us in the sense it would help our economy develop, and especially since we are graduating from LDC status to middle country status. I think we need all the assistance, all the cooperation that we can get from India. Then Of course, one example of cooperation in recent time is in the aftermath of the Ukraine war. Raw materials for the Rupur nuclear power plant, that they could not be delivered to a Bangladesh port because of U.S. sanctions on Russia. I think through Haldia port in West Bengal, that has been done, and those materials are going. So that is one instance of cooperation, so which is very much appreciated in Bangladesh. So I might add here that over these last so many years, attitudes toward people keep asking me, what's the attitude of the young people of Bangladesh towards India? And my response is, before 2009, the attitude as whipped up by previous governments in Bangladesh, the governments which were in power between 1975 and 1996, they had whipped up anti-India sentiments, and naturally that was also a result of what was done, of the tampering that was done with the constitution. General Ziaur Rahman, as a military ruler, he had not yet become president. He was Deputy Chief Marshal Administrator in December 1975. In that position, he exercised his dictatorial fiat and removed secularism from the constitution, removed socialism from the constitution. And then he and his acolytes came forth with a brand new idea of so-called nationalism. They called it Bangladeshi nationalism. Now, we always believe in Bangladesh that our nationalism is Bengali nationalism. Our nationalism is based on language, on the language movement that we waged in 1952. Next month we'll be observing it again. It has got nothing to do with territory. Territory, of course, Bangladesh is our country, but then we are not Bangladeshi nationalists. We don't say we are Bangladeshis, we are Bengalis. We're Bengalis, citizens of Bangladesh. And of course, Bengalis are here also. So then, finally, we have this, I would like to stress that in future, as time goes on, we have both countries will have elections. India in 2024, perhaps we'll also have it in early 2024. We would like this cooperation to go on further, like students exchange programs. Thousands of students come to India from Bangladesh every year. Then the Indian medical services are a powerful attraction for Bengali patients. Then we have academic exchange programs involving academics. But overall, we'd like to have more people-to-people exchange between the two countries. So, and then of course, whatever happens in future, I mean, good things will happen. This cooperation between India and Bangladesh is important because these two countries, if we look at the region as a whole, starting from Afghanistan, Pakistan, all the way, our relations are at a level which can be called very ideal. There are problems. Yes, there are some problems. For example, the Tista water sharing issue is still there. But then I think the land boundary agreement was finally ratified by the Indian Parliament, despite the fact that so many years went by after 1974. But that was a beginning. Thank you.
Thank you, Badrul Ahsan Sahab, for very enlightening, and we take your points. Maybe in my summing up remarks, I'll mention them. Without taking much time, can I request Professor Sanjay Bhardwaj to come out with substantial narratives on the subject. Most erudite, Professor Bhardwaj.
Thank you, Chair, Shri Shantanu Mukharji. Thank you, ICWA, and particularly Ambassador Vijay, Thakur, and Dr. Nivedita for inviting. I can see Ambassador Veena Sikri, Deputy High Commissioner of Bangladesh, is also here. The great audience. My task has been eased by Madam initially, and then to the Chair and the Speaker. Since I'm just focusing about the reflections of India-Bangladesh relations, the history, we have seen that the history of the two countries, and there we have become sovereign entity. We were part of common civilization, but now we are two sovereign independent entity. but still we are part of common ecological organic system. We cannot think separately. We have to work together. If we have to grow, we have to make two countries prosper as we are doing today. Of course, Bangladesh is very important for India, particularly keeping Northeast India into our mind, India's Act East policy into our mind. We are looking east, then we started acting east, and now we are connecting east. And while we are connecting east, we are connecting Bangladesh equally. Because it's a linchpin between India and the Northeast and the South Asia and Southeast Asian countries, and that's why we are focusing about physical connectivity, commercial connectivity, and cultural connectivity. Two very important aspects is there, that is the structural and functional aspects that determines the relations between the two countries. One, of course, the cultural identity, and another is the religious identity, what they have been talked about, BNP, Jamaat, Islam. I frame it in academic terms. Cultural identity brings us together, and the religious identity separates us. And the another structure is that small state fear psychosis that had been dominating discourse, and India being a regional, I would say responsible regional power, but that has been determining the relations. So of course, India has very clear-cut policy objective while dealing with Bangladesh. Security is one of them, the top priority. Political stability, we are looking forward to have political stability. And of course, the most and critical aspects that we are focusing about the economic development. And we have started looking that that Bangladesh would also join our developmental board, Sabka Saath, Sabka Vikas, that we are looking forward to have. And I think we have done wonderful. I divide India-Bangladesh relations into three layers, in fact. While I'm going with at the macro level, okay. And at the macro level, you will see the post-1996 and till date, except the one period, that 2001 to 2006, that we had been doing wonderfully in a way. From the Gujarat Doctrine that has come out from the non-reciprocity, we have signed significant agreements like Ganges Water Treaty, like CST Accords, bus diplomacy. Number of significant agreements had been done. Madam Sikri was instrumental in number of them. And, we had been doing wonderful. But the most important changes in India-Bangladesh relations, and that we have joined the developmental board, is 2010, where we have signed comprehensive framework agreement for cooperation. And that agreements, while Madam Sheikh Hasina visited to India, and there we have signed, and what was the tone of that agreement was that we will have bilateral initiatives into the regional framework. And that's why we are moving towards BBIN and a number of corporations today we are looking forward. And of course, we will resolve all the bilateral issues through mutual understanding and cooperations. And we have done number of them. Of course, mutual recognition to critical concerns of each others had been perfectly addressed at the macro level. I would say that wonderful. We are moving ahead towards cooperations in number of areas, and of course we have developed from bilateralism to multilateral approach in dealing with the resource sharing formula and all that thing. And Madam has correctly mentioned that we have extended 4 lines of credit to Bangladesh from 2010, and that was UPA was into power, but the NDA came and NDA extended and doubled and tripled the line of credits. That is around $8 billion line of credit had been extended to. And perfectly we had been doing very well. Like if you see that there were a review meeting in October 2021, and there it has been found that out of in first line of credit was 2010, and out of 15 projects, 12 projects had been completed by, and 3 was very close to be completed. This is the 2021 October data, in fact. And second, in line of credit 2015, we had been completed 2 projects, and the others are in the final stage that are going. Like the third line of credit 2017, that includes 17 major projects, out of which 1 has reached stage of execution, and others remaining projects are still in various stages that we are looking forward, working wonderful. My point is there that macro level, the two countries are doing excellent. Number of visits are taking place at the ministerial levels and all ambassadors, diplomats and bureaucrats, and they are coming. The problem is at the meso level. And what is happening at meso level, particularly I'm talking about, thank you very much for organizing this event, because I'm asking again that there is, the role of public diplomacy is very critical in India-Bangladesh relations, or any country's relations in South Asia. Cultivating youth, the youth mindset, because we are in the age of internet and all that. Basically, at the meso level, what I have seen that dialogues are taking place, but dialogues are taking place between this fixed people, certain peoples, certain think tanks. It's not going at the micro level. That I will come on my third point at micro level. But at the meso level, that scholarly works that has not been discussed much, that what the two countries are doing at the macro level has not been explored properly, and not much people-to-people cooperations had been done. I will say one. I'm from JNU, but JNU and Dhaka University has signed an MOU in 2011. Not a single event exchange had been done in last 1 decade. That is so my point is there that expanding the interaction between, not certain think tanks are going and meeting and same people are meeting, same people. I think that should need to be expanded much beyond in the regional level. We are talking about para-diplomacy, but how much events we are doing in Kolkata or Chennai or Maharashtra or Agartala, and how not only in the think tank, in the universities, in the colleges, in different platforms, that how much we are basically talking that what the India and Bangladesh had been doing at the macro level has not been much discussed scholarly, deliberated scholarly to the at the joint research projects can be done, academic exchanges, seminars, programs, and all that can be done. At the micro level, you know, the perception among the grassroots level matters a lot. And what is happening, earlier it did not matter, now we are in the age of internet age. And I found in my research also a number of points that there is less, very less knowledge to the people. If I'm interacting with the Dhaka University, because I traveled extensively, recently I was in Khulna University. And there also I interacted with people. They do not know what is happening, all that, you know, whatever the newspaper local, and they are reading and they are making their perceptions. It not has been disseminated properly what that the two countries are doing at the macro level and different projects, particularly in number of, because and their role of political parties, role of media, internet, social media are very critical. My point is there, I think need to expand at the micro level. It did not matter earlier, but today social media is there, and incidents like Durga Puja attack, and you can say CA, that has been, you know, miscommunicated by fake news, by fake media, by fake, and you know that you have already indicated about that active forces into the country. So my point is there, I think we need to take whatever we have done at the macro level at the micro level. And for that, we need extra effort from our side to tell that. Number of initiatives had been taken there, like Border Heart. The people of two countries are meeting. We are developing infrastructures, connectivity projects. I recently traveled Khulna, I went to Benapol. But there I came to know that there is one more one more checkpoints had opened. And I traveled from there, and that is less, they took less time to. So my point is there, number of infrastructure projects, connectivity, road, they are connecting people, they are taking time, but I think that parallelly the government through the public diplomacy can take things much closer to people. I would say that number of things had been done on security, on economics, infrastructure, connectivity, all that. 4 areas, I think, if the two countries would work further, will bring stability and development into that. One is that I think the two countries should develop common defense policy or common defense diplomacy. They should go for the common security agendas that can bring or provide peacetime military assistance and aid to defense the two countries, and I think that can develop a confidence between the two countries, because Bangladesh is our neighbor, very critical, very important neighbor, and there should not be any kind of mistrust and differentiating threat perception among the Bangladeshis. And if we can have a common defense policy, I think that can go very well. Second is very critical area is that energy cooperation. Number of scopes are there in northeastern India. In Bangladesh also offshore gas fields that we can, no company is, international companies are coming. Only two Indian companies, India had gone in two fields that no international companies were coming. I think they need to have a basin-wise approach. Bay of Bengal basins we can explore, we can have more research and developmental activity jointly, and we can explore and use it. Third is very important as area that can be, two countries can come out, because they are going to face in near future, both the countries, in the sense of climate and environmental issues. But we need to manage Brahmaputra basin properly. That's very important, critical point. Bangladesh should not happy that, oh, now Brahmaputra, the Chinese are making some, it would equally impact on Bangladesh. So we have to make a joint strategy to come out to deal with this. And fourth is very important, is the Rohingya refuge, because that is creating a regional security threats through drug trafficking. GABA, what is that? Yaba. Yaba is traffic from the Arakan and that region and coming to this. I'll not take much time. So this is my four areas that I try to explore that can work further to bring two countries closer at micro, at meso and macro level. Thank you very much for giving that. Thank you.
Thank you, Professor Bhardwaj. I mean, in one word, I would say that he has given a prescription for better bilateral relations between the two countries. Thank you for it. Now, without taking much time, can I request Dipanjan Chaudhury, and if I may especially request you to shed light on, say, the communication, the riverine, our needs for connectivity, the rail, etc., etc. The audience would be hugely benefited by that. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Mukherjee, for giving me a cue on what to hear. Thank you, ma'am, for inviting me. Thank you, Badrul bhai. Thank you, Professor Bhardwaj. There are many known faces here, including Saneja, who is a senior colleague of mine, and he spoke very well on Egypt-India-Egypt relations the other day. There's a veteran journalist here also, Gautam Da, who has covered Bangladesh for many, many years. I would not go into the aspects which have already spoken by Badrul bhai, you and Professor Bhardwaj, is all about the politics and the history of Bangladesh, and also in the bilateral relations. I would like to place Bangladesh in a light of a sub-regional power, a sub-regional, a country which can be a link between South Asia and Southeast Asia. This has been India's idea in terms of developing or helping Bangladesh to be the link between India and Southeast Asia, because number of countries in the neighborhood of Bangladesh have not been able to probably fulfill that role because of various internal dynamics. One, of course, is Myanmar, and there are different dynamics in Southeast Asia, which sometimes probably is not still evolving as countries in the wider Indo-Pacific region. But Bangladesh is very well suited in terms of fulfilling India's goals as well as Bangladesh's own goal in a I would also say in a post-COVID scenario. I'm not just as a sub-regional power, but also in a post-COVID scenario, to be a critical element in the supply chains initiative. And it come, since the COVID, when countries had started looking for China plus one strategy, very few had noticed that Bangladesh had emerged as a critical element in this strategy. A number of investments in the last 3 years had shifted to three particular countries in this region, east part of India. One is Vietnam, of course, which has been receiving a lot of investments even before COVID. Indonesia, and Bangladesh. Number of investments as part of China plus one strategy has been shifting to Bangladesh. That's one. Now, how much Bangladesh has the capacity to absorb it is another question, but definitely, I guess there is this, a beginning has been made. Number two is the role of Japan in Bangladesh, which I think not many have been focusing either in the international commentary and also in India. Is Japan, generally doesn't invest in a whim. It takes a long-term perspective. It takes a study, and then they go for a long-term investments. And as far as my understanding goes, Japan is looking at Bangladesh as a country with hinterland, which Sri Lanka is not providing them that hinterland in the Japanese calculus. So, and to break it further, if we look at, I know Bangladesh hasn't really made up its mind to either join the US Indo-Pacific strategy because there is hesitancy, and rightly so, given US approach in certain issues in Bangladesh, and also hasn't been forthcoming on Quad. But as a bilateral cooperation between Japan and India, there are some projects which have happened in Bangladesh. India has done the highway, Japan has helped in the industrial clusters, and also some bridges. And Japan is developing a deep sea port in Bangladesh, which will also look into the, with Bangladesh's hinterland, and also to serve the landlocked northeast. So landlocked northeast can serve as a market, not just for Japanese product, but also from products from Bangladesh. And there's already a group called PRAN, which supplies, again, these are not known in Delhi, but it's available in the markets of Calcutta as well as Northeast. So PRAN is a very critical or an important food production, and their soft drinks are available in the markets of Northeast and India, and particularly in West Bengal. So there is a scope, in terms of Bangladesh developing a critical element in the supply chains as a country which is important in the Indo-Pacific, in larger Indo-Pacific narrative. And I'm talking about often a narrative of an independent Indo-Pacific narrative, not this country's narrative or that country's narrative, because today or tomorrow Bangladesh has to realize that it is a critical country in the Indo-Pacific region because of its political stability, because it has a professional military force, and the military force which probably today has changed its doctrine from the past of not looking India as an enemy, from they're changing the doctrine of Pakistan, but looking more as its own security. Bangladesh Navy, I guess, is trying to also develop its outlook, and a country which has a role to play in the Indo-Pacific region in its own right, rather than getting into any particular countries. And I'm talking about extra regional powers calculus is in the Indo-Pacific region. Definitely, its locations, the geographical location, like Sri Lanka or Maldives, has been eyed by various countries. US, not many understand that US and Bangladesh has a history, and that history is not very smooth, and still not very smooth. For various reasons. Similarly, China and Bangladesh also has a history, while the powers that be between 75 and 96, as you said, have tried to do the course correction, made China an important stakeholder at some point of time. But I understand the current Sheikh Hasina government has a very balanced approach. They have even blacklisted Chinese companies, if I understand correctly. This is the China harbor, and sometimes for various reasons. It has a very balanced foreign policy approach in terms of balancing the three powers, and at the same time also has a nuclear power plant which has been backed by another country, which is, as you mentioned, about Rupur, and it's been built with Russian investment. While Russia is not a very big power to the east of India, Russian presence to the east of India is not very big, unlike Chinese presence or the US presence. And can Bangladesh be a critical element in terms of India's Act East policy in connecting the Northeast? Because as I understand that with the situation in Myanmar, and the situation in Myanmar doesn't show any improvement in the nearer term, probably there some Southeast Asian countries which wanted to connect itself with India via Myanmar may now look at Bangladesh as the link to Southeast Asia. And in my understanding, Singapore is probably looking at that, to connect India from Northeast. And I mean, Singapore has growing interest in Northeast. They have a skill center in Northeast. They may look into more skill centers in Assam in particular, and connecting, rest of Southeast Asia to the Northeast India via Bangladesh. Japan generally has a very positive attitude. I mean, a positive agenda, a country which has very benign political agenda in the post-World War II scenario in Southeast Asia, is looking Bangladesh very, very closely and very critically. And why I come back to Japan again and again is because it's a very serious player. It's a very serious economic player with no political agenda. That's most important, actually. And here, where it can partner India in improving, in lifting Northeast and Southeast Asia through Bangladesh corridor. There are elections coming up in Northeast, and hopefully, there will be governments in various parts of Northeast India providing stability. And now it's a stage which has arrived, in my opinion, to look beyond, make West Bengal and Northeast a hub for Bangladesh trade, and then take it to Southeast Asia. The connectivity between West Bengal and Bangladesh is excellent today. As Professor Bhardwaj was also mentioning, new BOPs are opening. I mean, today West Bengal's economy is actually dependent a lot on Bangladesh investments, actually, And if there are, major investments which come into Bangladesh, given its various skills in terms of the textile industry, I know in the post-COVID scenario, the textile exports from Bangladesh to Europe has been hit. But probably as Europe's economy, picks up, probably this sector will also pick up. And can West Bengal also be, if Bangladesh economy develops, given that, there are limited economic activity which is happening currently in West Bengal, maybe Bangladesh will continue to contribute a lot into West Bengal economy. Can Bangladesh investors think of investing in a big way in West Bengal and not just in Bangladesh, or more than trade, look into investing say in Tripura or in Meghalaya, build these corridors, because there are river connectivity which has happened. Can this Ganga cruise be later extended to parts of Bangladesh in years to come? And then, if situation in Myanmar improves, look to connect Myanmar via Bangladesh also, not just Mizoram but via Bangladesh. If not, then the deep sea port which Japan is developing in Bangladesh, and connect it to Indonesia and Thailand, Indonesia and beyond. And probably India can look into to develop a plurilateral involving India, Bangladesh, Thailand, India, Bangladesh, Thailand, Indonesia also, in terms, because Bangladesh workforce is present in Malaysia, if I understand correctly. There's strong connect, people connect between Singapore and Bangladesh, Bangladesh and Thailand. So these also feeds into India's Act East policy, and Bangladesh can think how to become important in India's Act East policy, and India could also think that how could make Bangladesh as a linchpin for its or as a springboard to approach into Southeast Asia and beyond. I would like to stop here. Thank you.
Thank you very much. This is, and more I heard about it. So what I propose is that the time is also over. It has been extremely educating. I sum it up, and the concerned may like to visit me. Very educational in the sense that we have got, so far we were bereft of, we have got ideas, whether it is on security cooperation, whether it is on the university exchanges. It was appalling to know that there has been no headway for the last decade, and the professor has been traveling to Khulna and all, noticing himself about not only about the BOPs, that the level of unawareness among the youth, which is sort of very disturbing. So thank you very much for that. And I hope the concerned take notice of it and act on that. And to you, sir, that's been very good. I'll come to you for Dipanjan, is that you, it was more like geopolitical. I thought economics much more. Thank you very much for it. That bringing in Japan and the US relations and all, we stand academically benefited by this thing. So on the whole, both these discussants were very good. And Badrul Bhai, special thanks to you for taking us through the annals of history and suggesting very specifically about the specific and pinpointed cooperation between the two countries. What do we say, the youth, and how do we go forward, the role of the military and all, everything came alive as if we are going through blood telegram and everything, and thank you for that. So on the whole, Ambassador ma'am, thanks very much. And on security, Professor Bhardwaj had highlighted the things and all, and he took the name of it, escaped my notice, Madam Sikri. Then I was involved in several security things in 2004-5 during the turbulent periods when allegedly the government agencies there were complicit in terror acts and all. And we worked very closely, ma'am, I remember, with gratitude and very professional approach, whether it was the covert agencies, and we were thwarting together, and we achieved, whether it is a Prime Minister's visit, preview, the security survey, or it was a cricket team under Saurav Ganguly which was visiting. So I was there and was cooperation. So good that she is also here as part of it. It added much weight to it. So now I close that, and then we have got, say, another 7 minutes time for question-answer session. And we will request all the audience who have been sitting throughout that any particular question, you know all the three distinguished luminaries here. You can address them directly and you can answer them. I hope that is okay. Yes, Madam Secretary. Would be delighted to hear.
Okay. Well, thank you very much indeed. Thank you for asking me to speak. I'd like to thank Ambassador Singh for this wonderful, organizing this wonderful event and inviting me for it. It's a great feeling to be back. Shantanu, I know we worked so closely together. And Badrul, it's great to see you here in Delhi after so many years. And I'm welcoming you to Delhi and Calcutta. I think your presentation was very interesting, and I thank Professor Bhardwaj and Dipanjan Chaudhury for their presentations as well. I think that it's a very crucial moment that we now face in Bangladesh-India relations. The bilateral relation is truly excellent. It has really reached heights that it has never reached before. But the challenges are equally serious, and it is these challenges caused by the world situation, the bilateral situation, and I think the forces of radicalization that have made a very strong re-entry into Bangladesh in recent years, particularly with the Rohingya camps and the influence that is having on these movements. And the other thing is that I agree on the question of South and Southeast Asia, but what is happening in Myanmar has completely changed that situation. So where Myanmar was and will always be a very essential part of the bridge between South and Southeast Asia and between Bangladesh and ASEAN and India, Bangladesh and ASEAN and Northeast and ASEAN, the role of Myanmar is crucial. But given the internal situation there, I think that there's a lot of rethinking that we have to do. And I think that the maritime aspects today gain much more importance, and we have to look at the maritime aspect. The maritime security is also there, but the maritime connectivity is something that we have really not been talking about at all. We've been focusing entirely on the land connectivity because that is by far the easiest, and there were many projects, Kaladan, multimodal, trilateral highway, and so on, which have been on the books for years. But again, these have fallen way back, particularly because of the situation within Myanmar. So now I think we have to look at the maritime, and we have to look at Bangladesh's role in the Indo-Pacific. And I think this has to be very crucial. I think there's not enough discussion on this. I think within Bangladesh, there's a problem because, the role of China is always there, and the role of China, the influence it tries to exert, seeks to exert, although I agree that, the government of Bangladesh has been very correct, very proper on that. But the role of China, nonetheless, is very strong, and they do not want Bangladesh to be involved at all in the Indo-Pacific. In fact, the Chinese ambassador in Bangladesh recently made some very dire statements, almost threatening statements, which was really not called for at all. But I think for Bangladesh, for India, this maritime aspect is very important. The role of the Indo-Pacific is growing. Of course, Quad plays a very good role in it, but still for Bangladesh, for India, for all of us, we have to look at this very, very carefully. The role of youth is very important, what Professor Sanjay Bhardwaj spoke about at length, and it's something that I've been talking about for a very, very long time. And I think that it's important for many reasons. Of course, the youth are the future of the country, and they have to be involved. But when I speak of radicalization, the impact is a lot on the youth. And it's below the surface, so you don't see it, in openly. So that is where the role comes in. We have to talk a lot about that. And then, of course, I think the riverine issue, the river connectivity, the river waters agreements, TISTA and so on, have to be looked at. I just want to highlight these 2 or 3. Maybe other people would like to comment on that. Thank you very much once again for inviting me here.
Thank you, Madam Sikri. Everything came alive, all your this thing. I'm glad that you were here. We are quite benefited by your presence and your remarks, very this thing. Now, I think the Q&A, the questions, you can shoot. Yes, please.
I'm Atul Ranija, editor, India Narrative. Just taking off from what Madam Sikri was saying about maritime security being more focal right now rather than the land borders. And in roping that with Dipanjan's comment about Japan coming in, would you think that a trilateral partnership between India, Bangladesh, and Japan, and we don't want to lose control, it's important who anchors this initiative, but do you think that is an important partnership in all dimensions, including infrastructure, which Dipanjan referred to, but also security? And the reason why I'm saying trilateral partnership is that it's not necessary for us to go to the Quad when we look at security of the Indo-Pacific. This can be done both in a bilateral and a trilateral format, independently of what the Americans are doing. So do you think such a approach or such a combination of India, Bangladesh, and Japan, and with its own headquarters, we develop this initiative into something big, could play a role? And secondly, is Japan, I don't know this, is it a dialogue partner in the BIMSTEC arena? No. So then probably that could be another element we can look at of integrating Japan into the structure of the BIMSTEC. Thank you.
Yes, the suggestion about a trilateral approach involving Japan, India, and Bangladesh, I think that's extremely interesting. That's a very new idea, and we in Bangladesh, the government, and of course broad civil society as such could work on it. But that would add a new dimension to Bangladesh's diplomacy in the region. See, India, Bangladesh, and of course you extend it to Japan. As Mr. Chaudhury pointed out, Japan is involved in Bangladesh's development projects with no, if I may use the word, ulterior motives. So they're there. So I think we could do that. And about BIMSTEC, yes, but BIMSTEC, that should also be reactivated. And if the Japanese authorities, the Japanese government is involved in the project, that would again add give an entirely new image to the situation in this area, especially in relation to Bangladesh's role in the Pacific, in the Pacific region. So that's, I mean, the first, of course, Japan, India, Bangladesh. Right? Nothing could be better.
Yes, please.
My question is with regards to...
Would you please, be grateful,
I'm sorry.
identify yourself?
Yes, I'm Dr. Shriparna Pathak. I'm an associate professor of China Studies at OP Jindal Global University. My question is in the context of China-Bangladesh relations and how does Bangladesh make it a proper relationship. I'll point out two instances, one from 2019 at the Paira coal-fired thermal plant. There was a brawl between Chinese and Bangladeshi workers, and as per the police report, the Chinese worker had killed the Bangladeshi worker. What happened subsequently is something which is not available in open sources, so I do not know how Bangladesh managed that. China has a disrepute for not respecting local laws. That is one thing which happened. In 2022, 4 Chinese state-owned enterprises said that they want to have a metro rail project and a smart city in Chittagong. In return, they want a share of profits from the smart city after selling off the plots. Now, what it doesn't mention is how the reclaimed land will be shared, how proceeds will be divided. So a lot of Bangladeshi scholars are now worried that if China actually has a part of the reclaimed land, then it's going the Sri Lanka way. So what is the government thinking about how does the relationship become proper in the 2019 case or the 2022 case?
The relationship becomes proper in the sense that Bangladesh is very careful about these Chinese overtures, Chinese efforts to come in, because the efforts that have been made over the last few years, in light of what's happened in Sri Lanka, in light of what's been happening in Pakistan, the Gwadar port, because Gwadar has gone into Chinese hands, Hambantota has gone to Chinese hands, and our government has been very, very careful. So when I refer to the term proper relationship, that means we value our relations with China, close ties with China, but there's a point where we need to keep the Chinese at bay. And I think the government of Bangladesh has been doing that very well, because we have good relations, as was pointed out recently, as was pointed out by Ambassador Veena Sikri, of the comments of the Chinese ambassador, some daring statements that he made. So we in Bangladesh we are not hostile to any country, not even to China, but then we realize very well that the government, we need their assistance, we need their support, we need their cooperation in so many other areas, but at some point, thus far and no further. So that is the policy that we in Bangladesh, by we I mean I'm not being an apologist for the government, but the people of Bangladesh as such we're very friendly with India, with everybody else, but with the Chinese and the points that you referred to, we know that these things have happened. We haven't discussed them, but then that's at the back of the mind. So, and we are careful. Yeah.
Anyone? Yes, please.
I'm Dr. Teshu Singh. I'm a research fellow at the Indian Council of World Affairs. I have a related question. Just a few days before the inauguration of the Padma multi-purpose bridge, Sheikh Hasina said that the bridge is not part of the Belt and Road Initiative and it was not funded by China. My question is, how did China react to this and why China is making such claims?
Have any role in the construction of the bridge, and of course, when you deal with China, as we know from history, when you deal with China, they're sometimes often very reactive. So, but then we have chosen in Bangladesh, we have chosen to ignore the Chinese position. It's best not to go into arguments with them, and it often their points often die down. So that is what we're trying to do. We don't get into any arguments with the Chinese. So they have they often make statements on certain issues to which the government does not deem it fit to respond. So that's it. I mean, they make these statements. They make it, but then the Padma Bridge is our bridge. We constructed it built it with our own resources, and we're happy about it. Thank you.
Yeah, the gentleman. Yes, please.
Thanks. I'm Rahul from India Narrative. My question is slightly different as compared to the strategic issues that were discussed. There are a number of reports on environment and climate change that say that South Asia is highly vulnerable. And considering that India and Bangladesh are, inextricably linked together, I was wondering if the two countries have kind of taken a look at, environmental and climate change issues. We also have this natural heritage, as in the mangroves. So just wondering if we have some kind of a cooperation or insight into collaboration on environment. Thanks.
About the mangroves, in the Sundarbans, the two countries have a great opportunity to cooperate here because the climate issue is something that affects both countries. And as far as Bangladesh is concerned, the government has been taking initiatives to develop a policy that will minimize the effect that climate change has been happening in Bangladesh, the impact that has been happening on Bangladesh. But given our relationship with India, given our spirit of good neighborliness, the two countries will be doing themselves and the region a favor if they cooperate not only on the mangrove issue, on the mangrove Sundarbans and mangrove forest issues, but in other areas as well. See, we have so many areas where climate change. There are projections that in the next 30 to 40 to 50 years, a good number of area in the coastal region of Bangladesh might be affected by climate change, might even go underwater. So we are afraid that something of the sort that might happen to the Maldives, the projections that the Maldives might go under, that could happen, that could be a possibility. But in order to stave off that possibility, I think India and Bangladesh need to focus, on climate change as a part of a greater diplomatic effort and a very concentrated diplomatic effort in both Delhi and Dhaka. Thank you.
Thank you, Madam. And I think this is the last question in view of the time constraints. Yes, please.
Hi, I'm Moa from India Narrative. Now, my question to you is Bangladesh is gearing up to exit the LDC list. Now, where do you think India will play a role in this, in deepening economic trade cooperations? And also the fact is India has assumed presidency for 1 year of the G20. Now, Bangladesh is looking at this opportunity to sort of expand its image and expand its, to put across its point globally. So if you could throw a little light on this, please.
Well, this graduation, our graduation from LDC has generated a whole lot of discussion in Bangladesh, and we're very happy about that. But we also realized the fact that once we graduate from LDC status, there will be some other problems that will come up. We need to adjust to new realities. We need to diversify our exports. At present, we have two areas where we can, which are beneficial for our economy: the ready-made garment sector, and of course the remittances sent by our people who work in the Middle East and other areas of the globe. So we need to, as somebody did point out in Dhaka the other day, in order to make this process successful. So, on the one hand, we're very happy, proud of the fact that we are moving away from LDC status up to middle income country status. But at the same time, in order to make the progression a bit more healthy, a bit more encouraging, we need to go for an expansion of exports. It is here that the Indian government can come in order to for Bangladesh to help diversify its exports. That could be done through having Bangladesh come into India on a more balanced, in a more balanced way. The trade imbalance is there. Again, as I said earlier, because India is a big country, it has its own products. Perhaps it doesn't need the products that we have to offer. But even so, in order to create a stable economic situation in this part of the world, India can help us there. And as far as India's role the G20 is concerned, that is being observed in Bangladesh with a great interest. So because it is considered as part of India's rise. I mean, India is a major power now. It's gradual rise to the position of being a superpower, and the fact that India has been for so many years trying to have the rules of the UN Security Council system changed in order to expand the system of permanent membership. These are things that we will look upon favorably in Bangladesh, because that will again give us a reason enough to be more cooperative with India, and India in turn could help Bangladesh in resolving certain issues. For example, the Rohingya issue, the Myanmar issues. And there are other issues, again, when we have problems of terrorism, terrorism imported from abroad, terrorism infiltrating into Bangladesh, the government is keeping good control over militancy, over terrorism, but the Indian cooperation will be very beneficial in the long run. Thank you.
So I think there are no more questions. Thank you, Ambassador. Please, yes, the last word.
Yes, please.
Mr. Islam, yes, please.
Myself, Rajiv Sharma. I'm editor Hindi in Indian Narrative. Can you understand Hindi? Can I speak Hindi? Yeah, please. मेरे 3 सवाल छोटे छोटे से हैं. पहला ये कि ब्रह्मपुत्रा बेसिन का मसला उठाया प्रोफेसर भारद्वाज ने. आप इस प्रॉब्लम को किस तरीके से देखते हैं? दूसरा, 1971 के बारे में जो 1971 के रेवोल्यूशन था, उसके बारे में आप न्यू जनरेशन को बताने के लिए बांग्लादेश गवर्नमेंट क्या स्टेप्स ले रही है, किस तरीके से उसको ले रही है? तीसरी चीज़, जो हमारी बंगोवीर शेख हसीना है, वो पीपल टू पीपल कम्युनिकेशन एंड पीपल टू पीपल कनेक्शन, इसके लिए क्या कर रही है और क्या करने जा रही है?
इस रीजन में जहाँ हम सब जानते हैं 1947 से लेकर अब तक जो कॉन्फ्लिक्ट क्राइसिस यहाँ हो रहे, कम्युनल राइट्स हो रहे और कम्युनल फीलिंग्स आते चले आते हैं. अब तो बांग्लादेश और भारत जब एक साथ काम करते हैं तो वो फीलिंग्स वी फील बेटर, से वी फील मोर कंफर्टेबल जब इंडिया और बांग्लादेश एक साथ काम करते हैं और मिलिटेंसी टेररिज्म इस इलाके में. तो ब्रह्मपुत्र बेसिन में अगर कोऑपरेशन हो, एक साथ हम काम करें, म्यूचुअली बेनिफिशियल है. हम खुश हैं ढाका में. और 1971 की न्यू जनरेशन के बारे में, हाँ, वो जो मैंने जब कहा था 1975 से लेकर 1996 में हमारे जो यंग जनरेशन थे, जिनकी पैदाइश 1975 में या 1971 के बाद हुई, 21 साल, उन्हें हमारे जो हिस्ट्री वो नहीं जानते थे, उन्हें जानने नहीं दिया होगा. तो जब 1996 में अवामी लीग शेख हसीना के लीडरशिप में फिर वापस इक़्तिदार में आई, फिर उन्हें मालूम हुआ, पता चला कि इतिहास क्या था, हम जंग क्या थे, जंग में हमारे लीडरशिप क्या थे, क्योंकि वो 21 साल में एवरीथिंग वाज, क्या कहते हैं, ब्रश्ड आउट ऑफ हिस्ट्री. तो गुज़श्ता सालों में 2009 से लेकर अब तक जो एफर्ट्स यंगर जनरेशन वो हमारे जो हिफाजत इस्लाम, आपको मालूम है हिफाजत इस्लाम 2013 में वो बाहर निकल गए थे, तो वो हमारे लिए एक थ्रेट था. साथ ही साथ और जो हमारे जो यंग ग्रुप है, यूथ ग्रुप, हम लोगों, मेरे जनरेशन के बहुत लोग, हमें ऐसा एहसास हुआ था कि आजकल के यंगर जनरेशन वो शायद वो हमारे हिस्ट्री भूल गए हैं, हिस्ट्री के बारे में सोचते नहीं है. मगर हमें भी ताज्जुब हुआ कि ये जो स्पॉन्टेनियसली निकल गई ये यंग लेडीज़, यंग वुमेन, यंग मैन, द शाहबाग स्क्वायर, हम कहते हैं शाहबाग जनरेशन. सो वो हमें दैट वाज वेरी इनकरेजिंग. और आजकल जो हम ढाका में कर रहे हैं, हमारे जो हिस्ट्री है, हिस्ट्री टेक्स्ट बुक्स में, हिस्ट्री नैरेटिव में हम हर वक्त 71 के बारे में 71 हमारे लिबरेशन स्ट्रगल, इंडियाज रोल, द रोल ऑफ अदर फ्रेंड्स, हमारे बांग्लादेश के मुक्ति संग्राम में, वो सब हम उनको पेश करते हैं। तो इससे क्या हो जाए, अब सरकार के साथ तो इख्तलाफात होंगे, यू कैन डिफर विद द गवर्नमेंट इन डिफरेंट एरियाज, मगर इस इन कोर प्रिंसिपल पर see we are with the government, we are with the government in the sense because we feel that what the government is doing, what the government is doing and civil society is doing together with the government is to recreate and reinvent and regenerate the history of 1971. So वही है, और people to people के बारे में, और लास्ट पॉइंट, अगर people to people, अगर people to people इंडिया बांग्लादेश के बारे में, तो बहुत सारे एरियाज है बातें करने में, एग्रीमेंट बनाने में। तो मैं एक चीज़ मैं अगर आप इजाज़त दे सकें तो वो है जो हमारे हम ढाका में, बांग्लादेश में भारत के टीवी प्रोग्राम्स हम देखते हैं, हिंदी, बंगाली सब देखते हैं, मगर हमारे टीवी प्रोग्राम्स यहाँ हम नहीं दिखा सकते। हमारे टीवी प्रोग्राम प्रोड्यूसर से अगर आप बातें करें, वो कहते हैं अगर इंडियन टीवी ओनर्स, चैनल ओनर्स से हम सवाल करते हैं, वो कहते हैं हाँ कंडीशन है वो फुलफिल करेंगे, हम आप दिखा सकते हैं। जब बांग्लादेश टीवी प्रोग्राम प्रोड्यूसर से, टीवी चैनल ओनर्स से आप बातें करते हैं, वो कहते हैं कंडीशंस इतनी स्ट्रिक्ट है, इतनी स्टाइफलिंग है कि हम आगे नहीं बढ़ सकते। तो उसे ठीक करना होगा। और फिर जो और एक इलाका जो है, हम पहले आफ्टर 71 हम आपके न्यूज़पेपर्स, बहुत सारे न्यूज़पेपर बांग्लादेश में जाते थे, न्यूज़पेपर जर्नल्स वगैरह। तो मेरे ख्याल में अब वक्त आया है कि हम भारत में, इंडिया में, नॉट जस्ट कलकत्ता, to Delhi also, Bangladesh newspapers should be available. Indian newspapers should be available in Bangladesh, so that we can have idea of what people in the two countries think about their countries, about themselves, and that also includes journals and books. तो ये मेरे ख्याल people to people, हम तो बातें करते हैं people to people cooperation, पर अगर concrete इस किस्म के steps लिया जाए, तो I think that will be that will help us all.
अच्छा, अब समय समाप्त हो रहा है। एक चीज़ मैं दोहराना चाहूँगा इससे पहले कि मैं इनको बताऊँ हिंदी में। भारद्वाज जी ने चीज़ें बताई, वही घूम फिर के आपने सवाल किया। वो इन्होंने बताया कि दो चीज़ों में विभक्त कर दिया जाए, एक सांस्कृतिक बताया, एक धार्मिक बताया। धार्मिक का सांस्कृतिक से कोई मतलब नहीं है, संस्कृति अपनी जगह। वहाँ रहने के बावजूद उसको देखभाल जो बांग्लादेश को जितने समझने की ताकत के मैं कह सकता हूँ पूरे विश्वास के साथ कि बहुत ज़रूरी है वो सांस्कृतिक क्षेत्र में जाया जाए परस्पर कोऑपरेशन के लिए, वही बेस्ट रिफ्लेक्शंस होगा। वहाँ पे अगर आप पहला बैशाख या बंगाली नववर्ष की अगर आप धूमधाम देखें, मैडम सीकरी विटनेस है उस पर, तो आपको लगेगा कि आप पश्चिम बंगाल में नहीं हैं, आप मतलब एक बिल्कुल अपना ही है जहाँ पर हो रहा है। जिस तरीके से रविन्द्रनाथ टैगोर उसी हिसाब से मनाए जाते हैं जिस तरह काजी नजरुल इस्लाम, वो भी संस्कृति का एक हिस्सा है। वहाँ के डांस, ड्रामे, फिल्म, म्यूज़िक, रविंद्र संगीत जो है आप वहाँ देखेंगे, रिजवाना चौधरी बोन्ना विश्व ख्याति प्राप्त है। अमर्त्य सेन के जो लेटेस्ट किताब आई है उसमें उनका जिक्र है। तो हर चीज़ में किसी में नहीं है। तो अगर जो क्षेत्र है धार्मिक वाला छोड़ के जो ये बता रहे थे CAA NRC उस पर करते रहते हैं पॉलिटिक्स, अगर संस्कृति के क्षेत्र में भारद्वाज जी जाया जाए, हमारे ख्याल से मैं ठीक समझा आपको, तो अगर उसमें जाया जाए तो उसमें परस्पर जो है द्विपाक्षिक संबंध जो है और प्रगाढ़ होंगे। अब अधिक समय ना लेके मैं DG साहब से कहूँगा इसको।
Let me thank everyone for all the contribution, the very positive contribution that has been made. And I want to acknowledge, which I did not in the beginning, Ambassador Veena Sikri. Thank you so much for joining us. You have very much enriched our discussion. But I don't want to take more time. I just wanted to add that ICWA has brought out a publication, actually. The publication is on India-Bangladesh relations and done in a manner that you can take it to the layman without the technicalities. This is a publication that we bought. This is an effort on part of the ICWA and I think the broader effort of the outreach, so that we take what the story of India-Bangladesh is to the Indian, to Indian youth as well, and to the common level. So I thought I would mention this because there was a lot of discussion about how to create greater awareness. So with that, I thank and I give it back to Dr. Naresh.
On behalf of the ICWA, I would like to thank the chair and the panelists for taking time out from your busy schedules to enlighten us with your thoughts and comments. We look forward to welcoming you in our future events. I would like to take this opportunity to thank the entire ICWA administration in providing support for conducting this program. Now, may I request everyone to join for high tea at the foyer. Thank you all for your attention and cooperation.